Hello and welcome to The Wire. Our guest today is Tanmanjit Singh Dhesi, a British Member of Parliament and the first turbaned MP in any European Parliament. He represents Slough, just outside London, which has a very diverse population. Mr. Dhesi has degrees from London University and Oxford as well as Cambridge. And as he just informed me, he is very comfortable in several languages, including Punjabi, Hindi, and Urdu. So we invite him later to say give a few answers in any of those languages which he feels comfortable in. Mr. Dhesi has been in the news in India recently for some really sharp comments on the farmers' protest he has made in the House of Commons. In 2019, he had given statements on the removal of Article 370, and Indian Housing Minister Hardeep Puri had then said that had he known about this earlier, he wouldn't have met him. India, on its part, recently reacted very, very strongly to British MPs speaking on the farmers' protests in Parliament and told them that it is an internal matter. This has not stopped Mr. Dhesi and others from speaking up. Mr. Dhesi, welcome to The Wire.
A pleasure, Siddharthji, to be on The Wire, and you and your outlet are held in very high regard for the fearless and independent nature of your journalism, and may that long continue within India, which itself has a distinction of having that plurality of media. So it's a pleasure, and I'm looking forward to being interviewed by your good self.
Thank you very much. So I had some very, very important questions lined up. But since you have told me this fantastic revelation about yourself and the fact that you learned these languages while studying in India, so I would first ask you, अपने बारे में कुछ बताइए.
जी देखिए, मेरा जन्म जो है वो यूके में है, जो स्लाउ इलाका जो हीथ्रो के बिल्कुल नज़दीक है, लंदन के नज़दीक है, जैसे आपने बताया. पर जब मैं 4 साल का था तो मेरे माता-पिता की ये ख्वाहिश थी, ये उनकी सोच थी कि अगर मैं 4-5 साल इंडिया में भी पढ़ लूँ तो उससे मेरी भी बेहतरी होगी और जो हमारे परिवार की भी. So with that thought in mind, although I was born and brought up in the UK, I spent 4.5 years in India, specifically in the Punjab, where I was close to my family, close to our ancestral land. And that is where I developed a love for the diverse cultures within India and the various languages. So as you rightly pointed out, I can converse in Punjabi, Hindi, Urdu, as well as certain European languages as well. And I think that had it not been for my parents deciding to send me to India at that young age, until I was about 9, when I moved back to the UK, then I don't think that I would have been conversant in 8 different languages and having that internationalist outlook on life.
So when you go to meet your constituents or anywhere in the country, really, because there's a large number of British Asians in the UK, they must be really delighted that you speak to them in these languages and establish a kind of rapport.
Siddharthi, I think you're 100% right. I think it illustrates to people that you have taken the time to learn those languages, learn those cultures. It helps to break down barriers. As you very well put it earlier and well researched, in that my Slough constituency itself is very diverse. It's the world in microcosm, wherein we've got the largest population of Anguillians from the Caribbean outside of Anguilla. We've got a large Afro-Caribbean community, a substantial Indian and Pakistani community. So 17% of my constituency have their roots or their heritage from India. 18% have their origins in Pakistan. We've got lots of Tanzanians, English, Welsh, Scottish, Irish, European. And when I go within Slough, given that we've got such a large Asian population as well, and I am able to go to the local mandir or the masjids or the gurdwaras, I can make speeches within Urdu or Hindi or Punjabi, and I think that helps to bridge the generational divides, as well as make people more proud of their different distinct identities and cultures, and hopefully it will enrich their own perspective on life by saying that, look, we should have a good knowledge of English, which is the national language here, and obviously is the working language as well as being the international language, but also we should be proud of that cultural heritage. So yeah, ਜਦੋਂ ਮੈਂ ਠੇਠ ਪੰਜਾਬੀ ਚ ਬੋਲਾਂ, when I get into my fifth gear in Punjabi especially, I must confess my Hindi and Urdu are not as good as my Punjabi. I think that's probably because of the love for Punjabi poetry and literature, and having read those books, the vocabulary within Punjabi, I would say, is at a lot higher level. But I think there are certain people within the Punjabi community that they feel a source of pride that somebody is not speaking in broken Punjabi, that rara, so we say sarak rather than sarak, and so on. So I think that is very good for myself and the family. And by the way, I did the same thing with my children, Siddharthji, in that both of my children, we sent them back to the Punjab to study there, and now they are multilingual as well. And so that's a family tradition that we carried on.
Okay, now coming to somewhat more contemporary questions. So you've been very forthright in speaking up about the farmers' protests in India, and especially at one juncture, you spoke about the use of water cannons on the protesters, saying that this is violative of human rights. Why would you, sitting far away, want to comment about what's happening in Delhi, on the outskirts of Delhi and elsewhere?
So that's well, for those people that know me, they'll know that I try my level best to make sure that I am being the voice for the voiceless, and being a voice also to the heartfelt anxieties and concerns of my constituents as well. And in terms of being forthright, I think that's just my general nature, that I try to converse or speak in a sensible manner, or in more dulcet tones as and when required. But if we need to be forthright, then that is how it needs to be. So we shouldn't be mincing up our words, and that I think the Prime Minister is more than aware. When I took him up on his racist and sexist remarks within the chamber, in terms of highlighting his aversion, or sorry, his usage of terminology, which was very Islamophobic, to put it mildly. But with regards to the farmers' protest, look, that is something which is of great concern to many of my constituents, but for me personally as well. For somebody whose parents and grandparents have tilled the land within the Punjab, that are from a farming background, that and by the way, I'm somebody, whenever I go back to India, I always go back to our ancestral farm. There's a strong link and a connection with the land. Many of my friends and family are involved in those protests, because as they see it as their fear of the deregulation of their markets. They fear the major corporates moving in, and of that encroaching privatization. And for them also, as well as for many of my constituents, the Indian diaspora, by the way, has, this has galvanized the Indian diaspora, because many of them either have land in India, or they have links to agriculture, or their family and friends are currently tilling the land. So for a whole host of reasons is why more than 100,000 of them have signed a official parliamentary petition, and why the likes of me have spoken up on it, because we were horrified when we saw footage of water cannon, tear gas and brute force being used against those peaceful farmers as they proceeded towards the capital, Delhi. So that's for those reasons, for me to be silent, I don't think that was going to happen. So I had to voice my concerns on my own behalf as well as my constituents' behalves.
So it's, shall we say, conviction as well as speaking up for what matters to your constituents. And it's a combination of both, rather than, as has been said here, that you stay out of our business. This is an internal matter. Earlier this week, if you recall, when the House of Commons discussed the issue, which was fairly unprecedented because you've been speaking up, and I saw the Mr. Jacob Rees-Mogg responding to you, but otherwise for the House of Commons to discuss it is quite, I won't say unprecedented, but perhaps it's, reflects the strong views of all those MPs also who signed the letter. So you got this response in India.
Yeah.
I mean, of course, now you've got this official response with your High Commissioner being called by our Chief Foreign Secretary, who said, mind your own business. Basically, this is our internal matter.
But I debunked that myth, that particular myth, within the parliamentary debate earlier this week. As I stood up, I said, look, let's tackle this head on. There are certain people, especially supporters of the current governing party, who are attesting that foreigners, keep your nose out of it. But human rights are universal. And I think that it's a world in which human rights are cherished is a world which is better for all of us, because whether it's our press freedoms or hard-fought academic freedoms or just general human rights, that is important to everybody across the world. So in terms of agricultural laws, I'm fully aware of the context, and I'm more than happy to discuss the context of that. But that's not what was discussed within Parliament. What was discussed were the infringements on human rights and press freedoms, with the arrests of journalists, of human rights activists, climate change activists, including young women, whether it was Disha Ravi from Bengaluru or whether it was Nodeep Kaur from the Punjab, and with allegations of sexual assault and torture while in police custody. When we hear and read about these reports, it not only incenses certain people, but also pains us, because those young women, those activists, they're the future of India. So in terms of within the British Parliament, for those that say, keep your nose out of it, I can say to them, don't have the misconception that the British Parliament is just enamored with what's going on in India. That's all they're concerned about. No, the vast majority of our time within Parliament is concentrated on local and national issues. However, the beauty of being a British parliamentarian, and why I love being in this mother of all parliaments, is that we end up discussing day in, day out, the affairs of different parts of the world. So whether it's with regards to the rights of indigenous people within the Americas or in Australia, or what is happening in Palestine, there have been debates on a regular basis about Syria, about what is happening in China. In fact, Siddharth, just earlier this week, I also was involved in a debate about what's happening in China. So I raised the issue about the aggression of China on the Indian border, in the South China Sea, the genocide of the Uyghur Muslims, the mistreatment of minorities, as well as the assault on democracy within Hong Kong. So those issues we discuss day in, day out. And I tell you why I love that we do that, is because it stretches the capabilities of MPs like me here in the UK, because you've got to research widely, you've got to be able to go into debates and hold your own and say things which are pertinent to that particular debate, but they also help our friends and allies across the globe with constructive criticism, as well as informing the collective national thinking of our country. So we consistently scrutinize our own government as well as foreign governments, and I think that is very, very, very much required for a healthy, vibrant democracy.
Well, few people have said now that what if the Indian Parliament were to discuss Brexit or Scottish independence, or your healthcare system, for example?
Brilliant. I'll tell you what, that would be absolutely wonderful, because we would get certain aspects of that debate. And if there were aspects of constructive criticism and things whereby we could take upon those practices to improve things within the UK, then that is brilliant. I think we live in an interconnected world. For those people that aren't aware, the internet, the media nowadays, the reason why I'm aware of The Wire is because of your presence on the internet, on social media, the platforms like Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and the like. They have made the world a much smaller place. So ideas move freely. And we're constantly learning from one another. Nobody has a monopoly on knowledge. Nobody has a monopoly on progress. There are certain things that are happening in either India or Pakistan or China that we think, oh, that's brilliant. This is what's happening in Japan or South Korea. We will take those certain aspects. And likewise, there could be things happening in North America or in Africa. And sometimes people learn from us. Sometimes we learn from them. So that's fair play. If somebody wants to discuss those issues, please do. But nothing will stop British parliamentarians from discussing what is happening, not just within our European continent, but as I said, across the globe. And that, in terms of certain things, if people haven't realized yet, then they do need to realize that human rights, academic freedoms, human freedoms, and press freedoms are extremely important, and they cut across international boundaries.
So when you came to India in 2019, August, I think it was, and you met our housing minister, Mr. Hardeep Singh Puri, and a day later, you were somewhere else and you spoke about Kashmir once again, and he said, had I known about it, I would have never met him. So firstly, he could have known about it because you had already made similar statements earlier. But that apart, what did you feel when he said that? That, you come to our house as a guest, as somebody who wants to see our home, and then this is what you do. There was a reflection of A, betrayal, and B, keep your nose out of it once again. What did you feel when he said that?
Look, in terms of keeping one's nose out of it or betrayal, nothing is of the sort. My opinions, the reason why I've built up such strong social media platforms, so in terms of the Dhesi, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram platforms, the YouTube channel, and the website, the tsdesi.com, is that people can know what I'm thinking directly rather than having to rely on somebody else. So I'm sure that individuals within India would have known about my views. Indeed, if I ever end up visiting other nations, they also know my views. So I have been outspoken about, for example, the mistreatment of minorities, whether it's in terms of Hindus or Sikhs or the Ahmadiyya Muslims within Pakistan, or whether, as you mentioned, about Article 370. And the reason why I've spoken up consistently about that, or whether it's what's happening in China or elsewhere, or even what's happening in the UK, if there are aspects of racism, or even with the Black Lives Matter movement within the US, it is no holds barred, because we need to make a stand. If we do not stand up for the rights of others, then what exactly are we doing in media or in politics? And for those individuals who know the Sikh community, well, look, we are taught to feed millions of those in need for free, day in, day out, and we are brought up to stand up for the rights of others. So you can bet your bottom dollar that when it comes to standing up for the rights of ourselves, then we will go to the nth degree. And those aspects should be apparent to not just individuals within the Indian polity, but others across the globe as well. So in terms of what's happening in Kashmir, look, had a similar move been made within the Punjab, where if that state had been bifurcated or if they'd been made into union territories, I would have made a similar statement, because that would have pained me as somebody of Punjabi origin. But I can't just speak up for the Punjab. If I am being a true Sikh, if I'm being a good human being, then I should be speaking up if there are injustices, as I perceive them, in other parts, not just of India, but further beyond. So, and I think most good Indians also would be making such similar views known. And I know that within India there is a diverse range of thought, of views, So even with regards to Kashmir, I know the governing party of the day had their own policies, but opposition parties like the Congress and others, they had opposing viewpoints, and long may that diversity of thought continue as well. But it definitely wasn't a betrayal, and I can assure you that going forward as well, that will do certain things which are for the benefit of both nations. So the reason why I had gone to meet the minister, and in fact I had met various BJP ministers over my tenure as the Member of Parliament for Slough over the last 4 years. So I've been in public office for more than a decade. I've served for a decade as a local elected councillor, and for the past 4 years as a Member of Parliament. As soon as I got elected, what did I want to do? I wanted to increase the links, to increase the trade, to increase ties between the UK and India. And I thought that the best way of doing that, one of the best ways, is to increase aviation links. People, especially those of Punjabi origin, you'll know, Siddharth, that in terms of the UK Indian diaspora, that the largest community is the Punjabi community, followed closely by the Gujarati community. So my requests to those in power within the government was that, look, we should have more direct flights from London, from Birmingham to Amritsar and Ahmedabad, because many people, especially the elderly or the young, they are no longer looking to go to India because they have to go through the uneasiness of a 12, 13, 14-hour journey of having to go either via through Dubai or Tashkent or Delhi. They'd rather just go straight to Amritsar, go to visit the Darbar Sahib, the Golden Temple, and then that could be a gateway for others, not just the Indian diaspora, but others would come along to India as well to visit the Golden Temple and beyond. So that's the mindset. So at that point of time, I know that certain people took exception to that. Why are you meeting BJP ministers? They were of another political affiliation. And when I went to meet with whether it was the Congress chief minister of the Punjab at the time or other Congress leaders, then people who were from the BJP or Akali Dal, they didn't like that. Then but being fair, I also met with leaders of the Shromani Akali Dal, as well as the Delhi Chief Minister, who is from the Aam Aadmi Party, and other Aam Aadmi Party leaders as well. So I have tried my level best to be as non-political as possible, but working for the betterment of both nations, of both peoples, so that we can take things forward.
Going back to my original point about Mr. Puri getting riled and making that statement, this has happened in the past with various governments, may I say, that you may not be welcome in India anymore. So you may not be able to come here, or at least if you do, there will be no one seeing you from the government, which is important there because you want MP to MP kind of relationships also.
Look, everybody is more than welcome to their own particular opinions. And when I voice my concerns, I am not being anti-India or anti-national. I think the Indian nation is a lot larger than the current government of the day, whosoever it may be. So I think that's something that should always be very much within the hearts of Indians, as well as indeed nationals of other nations, that if we voice concerns about the policies or actions of a particular government of the day, we are doing so in good faith. And ultimately, look, if we look at the farmers' protest, it's not just me speaking about it. The whole world is speaking about it. It's the largest protest on the planet. You've got global climate change activists like Greta Thunberg. You've got celebrities like Rihanna and world leaders, as well as parliamentarians. You will have seen the parliamentary debate, by the way. That was very oversubscribed. So only about 20 of us, or less than 20 of us, could get in for that hour and a half debate. And we had a 3-minute time limit. Had there been a greater time limit, then you would have seen many others. But if each time parliamentarians in the UK or elsewhere voice their concerns, and if then they are met with that, oh, you're no longer welcome here, then I think the catchment area for ministers and so on would reduce, because it's our job to be speaking up for human rights. And you would have seen in that debate, it wasn't just members of the Conservative Party, it was the Labour Party, Liberal Democrats, Scottish National Party, and others, because this is an issue that has touched people in every single constituency. That petition, by the way, was signed by individuals from every single one of the 650 UK constituencies, people from within the Indian diaspora, as well as people within the white majority British community. So how many people will we end up stopping from meeting ministers? The plurality of thought within the Indian diaspora is considerable, because there are people who are affiliated or supporters of the BJP or Congress or Shomani Akali Dal, Aam Aadmi Party, the DMK, and other regional Indian parties. And by the way, conversely, Siddharth, it's also the case that we've got people from Indian political parties coming over to the likes of the UK and the US to hold political rallies, conferences, to have fundraisers here. Do we ever stop them? We say, look, that's everybody's got a right to engage, as long as somebody's not preaching hate or violence. Then I think that we need to be able to have that diversity of thought.
So, were you at all behind, or the guiding force, or the person who went around? Because from what we hear, the person who went around putting a little bit of lobbying pressure, were you and a few other MPs behind Mr. Boris Johnson not coming to India in January 26th?
No, I believe the reason, as was stated also officially by the government, is that the reason why the Prime Minister didn't come is because of the pandemic, the COVID crisis. And at that point in time, there was a huge surge in coronavirus cases. So I believe that was why he did not come. In terms of myself, at no point did I say, if I had wanted to say a particular thing, I don't usually mince my words. I will just stand up on the floor of the House and say certain things. But what the likes of me were at pains to say to the Prime Minister, and I did say in December, on the 9th of December, I think it was, when I asked him a question in the chamber, was that can you please ensure that you convey the heartfelt anxieties of my Slough constituents and those of others within the UK to your Indian counterpart, to the Indian Prime Minister, when you next meet him? And can you also make sure that you stand up for human rights? Do you agree that everybody has a right to peaceful protest? But little did I know that our Prime Minister would be so clueless as to not even know what he was speaking about, because he started talking not about the farmers' protest or about what he would be saying to the Indian Prime Minister. He started talking about Pakistan. So, but anyway, that's the whole different ballgame.
So, a lot of Sikhs, firstly, the Indian farmers who are protesting initially on national television, on Twitter, etc., were called agitators, Khalistanis, Khalistani support, and then that kind of subsided, and then a lot of others have said that they're getting a lot of help physically and funding-wise and moral support-wise from Sikhs abroad in Canada, UK, Australia, and most Sikhs abroad also are Khalistanis. That must have, how did you react? Did it pain you, or did you laugh it off, or did you say that's simply not true, or yes?
Look, firstly, in terms of who's behind the farmers' movement, it's the farmers in India. It is individuals from different states across India. It is people of different faiths, whether that's Hindu or Christian or Muslim or Sikh. They are all involved. At the vanguard for it are the farming unions. So it's amazing for somebody who knows a fair bit about the trade union movement in the UK and in other countries, to try to get farming unions, or virtually all the Indian farming unions, on one platform. That is an incredible achievement. So they are the rock bed of that movement. And to suggest that this is somehow originating from foreign external forces is
No,
laughable.
let me clarify. It's not originating, but it's getting all kinds of support.
Don't worry, I am coming to that. I'm just building up the base. And in terms of, so that's where the origination of the movement, and that is why you have millions of people protesting in different parts of the world, and why there are hundreds of thousands camped on the outskirts of the capital. In terms of those of us in the diaspora, look, as I've said before, it does pain us when we see our brethren, when we see our elders or women or children, when they're out there in that freezing cold, to speak up, to stand up for their rights and for their livelihoods, and they fear that farming within the Punjab or in some of the other states. I know most of the protesters in and around Delhi at the moment are either from Haryana or the Punjab or UP or Rajasthan or Madhya Pradesh, but for us, with links to the Punjab, we are very, very concerned about our family and friends and relatives. And if we see that they are under pain, it won't take the likes of me to be raising my voice. There will be a collective surge, a movement of voices. And that is what happened. People across the globe took to social media, took to the various Punjabi channels, and in particular, and they voice their concerns. And in terms of this misnomer, each time when the Sikhs say something that they're branded as separatists or terrorists, what an absolute load of nonsense. And as I raised also in the House earlier this week in the parliamentary debate, that this is part of a pattern whereby if Sikhs raise their voice, they are somehow separatists, terrorists, Khalistanis. If Muslim Indians raise their voice, they must be Pakistani, it is alleged. And if Christians say anything, they must be under foreign political or foreign interference. That is no way to build an inclusive society. And there are certain unscrupulous elements of the mainstream media, and they are doing colossal damage to the integration and the diversity of India, because it pits one community against another. That's not how things are. And we saw that what was going on. We saw that the farmers, and because there was a significant number of Sikhs within that movement, that they were branded as separatists or Khalistanis, and they made their voices heard. But what was even better to see was that we had farmers from Haryana, UP, and elsewhere saying, "Look, we're Hindus. Are we separatists as well? Then this is a farmers' movement. This isn't some sort of separatist movement or a terrorist movement. We are we enable that breadbasket of India to be there, and more than half of the people within India have direct or indirect links to agriculture. So to go against the Andatas is laughable. It's farcical." And that is why we need, the likes of myself would have made a stand against that. And, we will continue to ensure that everybody has the opportunity to have their voice heard, rather than being misconstrued or misbranded or labeled in a demeaning manner.
So you had constituents coming up to you saying that, this has really hurt us because our families are there. And, I came over, say, 10 or 12 years ago. I have cousins in the farming business and in the protest. My grandmother, grandfather, because there's a lot of women also. So do they come up to you and say, this has really hurt us? These kind of comments?
Siddharth, you can... that is encapsulated by the fact that more than 3,500 people within Slough signed that official parliamentary petition. Many more would have signed had they had the ability to get on to the internet, and because not everybody is internet savvy. That is something that you could just take as given. I knew the level and strength of feeling simply because, as a hard-working member of parliament, I try to keep my finger very, very close to the pulse and see what are different individuals, what are their concerns, what are they speaking at? Is it about hospitals? Is it about roads? Is it about our defense forces, etc.? Or is it a particular foreign affairs issues which has really snowballed? And this was one particular issue. And people were saying, as our member of parliament, what will you be doing? I said, you don't need to worry about that. I've already held meetings on this particular issue. I've written, and then I did subsequently go on to write to the Foreign Secretary to make sure that he raised, and thanks and fair play to the Foreign Secretary, because he raised it with the Indian Foreign Minister during his trip in December. And so that is part of the reason, as a member of parliament, I have always got to be sensitive to the views of my constituents. And there is a sizable Punjabi constituency as well. But in fact, amongst many of the Indian diaspora, the large majority, especially of my constituents, were speaking up for the human rights of farmers. They said, look, whatever happens with the farm laws, that's an issue which no doubt will be debated. I know that in terms of the context of the farm laws, that because of lowering incomes, because of rising debts and the rising level of suicide rates, everybody agrees on agricultural reform, but nobody is agreed on one particular solution. I know that the government has proposed its 3 new laws, which they feel will be beneficial, but I am also aware that virtually all farming unions are strongly opposed to that for varying reasons, as well as most of the major opposition parties. So that diversity of thought is in India, and in fact, many of the state governments, I'm also aware of the fact that they have contended that these laws are unconstitutional because agriculture is a matter for state governments, and therefore this, as they see it, as they perceive it, is a power grab by the central government into the devolved domain of states. But those weren't the issues that we discussed. That was just something that I was aware of because of my knowledge of Indian polity, having as you rightly pointed out, having my MPhil was actually in South Asian history. So I studied the colonial era of history, as well as the post-independence period. And I'm fully aware how language, religion, and politics can become a toxic mix to divide communities, and it has over decades and centuries, in fact. So we weren't even discussing the history or the polity. What we were discussing it was the human rights of those protesters.
But I'm sure I'm sticking to this point because this is the one point that keeps coming up whenever Sikhs in the West are talked about here. And in fact, I must tell you also in official circles, though not publicly, that many of the Sikhs of Britain, especially those who went there several generations ago and therefore have a different kind of connect, happen to be supporters of a separate idea, a separate country, call it Khalistan or whatever. So is that something that you find?
It's not the conflating of any particular issue with every single time with separatism is a complete red herring. Let me reassure you, I'm somebody who I think is well versed in both cultures, and being a regular visitor to the Punjab, and in fact, I've traveled the length and breadth of India as well, so I know the wonders of India and its various people, and in particular the Sikh community, which is dispersed in various parts of India. But from my knowledge of the Sikh community is that there is a diversity of thought. They're very independent minded in terms of thought. So within the UK, there is a large contingent which support the Congress Party. Others, there's a large contingent which support the Aam Aadmi Party. there is also a large contingent which supports the Shromani Akali Dal, and there are those, as you rightly point out as well, that support the Shromani Akali Dal Amritsar, who obviously have a more of a separatist agenda. There are others who couldn't care less. There's a substantial chunk of those as well. While people like me are interested and would love to see India progress, there are others for whom India is not even on the radar, because for them, it's issues within the UK or in Europe which are of primary concern. And many of them, don't even know in terms of whether it's Hindi or Punjabi or Gujarati and so on, or Tamil. So, and I think the barometer for where the Sikh community stands are the elections happening in the Punjab on a regular basis. So at different points in time in history, different political parties have held the reins of power. Whether that's been the Shromani Akali Dal under Mr. Badal, or whether that has been the Shromani Akali Dal Amritsar under Mr. Maan, or whether it is a Congress party or an alliance of various different parties. So that is the actual barometer of the Punjabi community. And I think at the moment there's a Congress government, so that I think will show you where most of the Punjabis sit, because most of the Sikh community is still within the Punjab. So globally, if we take it on a global sense, but you can take it from me that in the UK, to try to pigeonhole the Sikh community into one particular aspect is absolutely nonsensical. It's like trying to label the Hindu community or the Muslim community into one particular pigeonhole. It just doesn't work. And the more people do that, the more it pains and grieves even the sensible, moderate individuals when they think, why is this nonsensical approach being taken when we speak up for our rights? We're okay when we're feeding langar or providing medical treatment to other parts of India or other parts of the world, or going on humanitarian missions. But if anybody starts speaking up for their rights, whether it's after the genocide of 1984, wherein many people still haven't got justice, when we start speaking up on those sort of issues, then this issue of separatism is brought to the fore. So I hope that has allayed the concerns or the misconceptions of many of your viewers of the Wire.
So I just read recently, you may have too, in Australia and Canada, in some parts, there were some tensions in one or two places. There were clashes between Sikhs and local Sikhs and other Indian communities. Has anything of that happened in Britain? That's part one. Part two is, what do others who are not Sikhs come up to you and say? And I'm talking specifically about other, say, supporters of this particular government, whoever they may be. What have they come up and say? So it's a two-part question, which connected, I think, to say that is there rising tension, and what are they talking to you about your comments specifically?
Right. Well, look, in terms of community tensions, I'm aware of some of the incidents, for example, in Australia, wherein certain right-wing elements tried to hold or held rallies to go past the Sikh Gurdwaras, or the vandalism inflicted on some Sikhs. But in the UK also, there was an attempt by certain far-right or right-wing forces to hold similar rallies in the UK, to go past Gurdwaras in London, in Leicester and in Birmingham. Thankfully, there weren't any such incidents or rallies planned in Slough. But they were not allowed to happen by the authorities within the UK because of the current lockdown process, because the government is taking that extremely seriously. So, but I think those individuals who are trying to stoke up community tensions would be ill-advised to take that course, because the politics of hate and division ultimately will lead to tensions and thereby lead to divisive thoughts, within communities, which is not where we want to be. With regards to those, there is a diversity of thought in terms of the Indian diaspora. As I said, most Punjabis in particular, they are very much in favour of the farming movement. Even not just Sikhs, by the way, people of Hindu or Muslim community as well. Not everybody is in favour of the farmers, because for that, some they're more urban based, so their priorities are very different. Which is understandable. That's how it is. In terms of supporters of the current governing party, well, look, obviously they are more than welcome to their own particular viewpoint. There may be points in history where where I've worked jointly with them, as I said, in terms of on aviation issues, but there could be issues such as the farmers' protest now, where we may not see eye to eye, or we may have to agree to disagree. But as long as we can do that in a sensible manner, in a civilized manner, then I think that is what is the most important thing within a democracy. And then let's see where that takes us.
No, so do they come up to you or write to you to say we are very offended, and this is not what we expect an MP to do, and you have really not listened to? I mean, it's one thing to say that there is a diversity of view. We all agree. In a sense, that's mom and apple pie. But do they come up to you or write to you, or are there in the community media or gatherings saying that this man has let us down?
Thankfully, the vast majority of Slough constituents are feeling the love, and I can feel the love in terms of, especially on social media, as well as via email. So we receive hundreds of emails every single day. And at any given point in time, I've got more than 1,000 different bits of casework, and people do voice their concerns, pro or against. So, as I've said, the vast majority of constituents who have contacted me on this issue about the peaceful farmers' protests has been, to make sure that I spoke up in favour of human rights of those protesters, journalists who had been arrested, and so on. But there is a small minority who have an opposing viewpoint. So they know what my viewpoint is, because, as I said, they only need to go on social media. But at least they're doing so in a sensible manner, and they know that this isn't some weird thing that we're just singling out India on a particular issue. They're a lot more sensible, because they know how British polity works. Is that, as I said, day in, day out, we're discussing a whole plethora of international issues as well as national issues. But in regards to what's going on social media, I think that it has really opened up the eyes of people. So I've had hundreds of fake profiles trolling me. The tweet Twitter troll factory has been in overdrive. And good luck to them. Carry on. Don't worry. That's not going to stop me from airing my views and doing what I feel is right by my conscience. Others who have said, "Oh, this individual must be a paid member of the ISI or the Pakistani High Commission, must have put him to it." Or another thing that I can reveal to the viewers of The Wire is I don't think I've ever even been to the Pakistani High Commission. I've been to the Indian High Commission on various occasions to attend events and to speak up on issues such as aviation, or to attend multicultural programs. But I attend all the time events pertaining to different communities, and so they are no doubt will just the keyboard warriors will carry on. Good luck, as I said, to them. But what it has opened up is, unlike certain areas or certain nations where it is a given fact and it's famous that individuals have millions of followers, most of whom are fake. That's not the case with my Twitter profile. So I have not paid a single penny for any follower on that. So all those tens of thousands of followers on that are genuine, organic followers, and many of them are linked to media, those individuals who are following him from within the UK, or people in politics and in terms of the influencers around the globe. And when that trolling happens, what these individuals don't realize is that doesn't just reflect on what is going on in India or just on me, that opens up that Pandora's box, and other people become more aware. I'll tell you another farcical incident, and I raised this also in the House, and I was gobsmacked when the famous Indian actors and cricketers simultaneously tweeted out, copy pasted and regurgitated the official government line. And many people like me, we just astounded. We thought, oh my God, what's happened here? What is that about? But it was only afterwards then people, the viral videos, especially on Signal and WhatsApp and Facebook, about the 2019 Cobra Post Cash for Tweet sting operation. So that when that happened, what did that do? That not only dented the credibility and the conscience of those so-called celebrities, it also did colossal damage to the reputation, the national reputation of India, in that that nexus or that link between the people in power and people within within acting, because many of us had been inspired, but by performances, by acts on Indian cinema. I am a keen watcher, not just of Hollywood cinema, but also Bollywood and the Punjabi films as well. So we constantly, take that in. And there have been times when I have been so inspired by certain actors within, for example, Hindi films, and I just thought, wow, that has really awakened my conscience. That has brought a different perspective to my thinking. And I have thanked them, not personally, but internally, I've thanked those particular individuals. But then people like me have begun to realize that just because you can hit a ball around on a cricket pitch, or just because you can act in front of a camera, doesn't mean that you have that integrity, or that you can be that beacon of light for many around the world who are looking to you for inspiration. And that's something I know that we can't paint all sports stars and all Indian actors in that. I know that there have been actors who have spoken up on these issues, and I've also read reports in the Indian media that some of them have been targeted, and that's a cause for great debate on social media, because during these farmers' protests, I have begun to track a lot more about what different individuals are saying, and I've become more aware of what The Wire, as well as other publications, are saying. So that's really opened up the eyes of the Indian diaspora, and a lot of people have been unmasked by what's going on during these protests. So that's just another aspect, I guess, of an agitation.
So I can tell you, I'm sure you had sensed this, but you really got gobsmacked when you saw these heroes of people around the world saying the same thing. It was a cut and paste operation, and it may have come from one or two sources to say, well, here it is, please put this out. And they had to put it out, or they did put it out. And but we've known about this for a long time. The wonderful part is that this time, because it was so high profile, because it was so kind of, everyone coming together, because it showed several things. You mentioned lack of integrity, but it also showed that these guys, don't think of the consequences, and they just blindly put these tweets forward under their names, which damage their credibility.
The farmers' protest, it goes way beyond the shores of India now, because it's really captured the imagination of the global trade union movement, of climate change activists and others. People are taking a keen interest, and as I said in the House of in the Houses of Parliament here, that had the UK government issued such an edict to celebrities in the UK, they would have been laughed out of the country. And then celebrities with a conscience would have tweeted out the exact opposite to what the British government would have demanded in defiance. That's the nature of people who should be inspiring individuals. It's very, very difficult to be a Meryl Streep. It's very, very difficult to be somebody like a Susan Sarandon or a Greta Thunberg, because they do things according to their conscience, and that's the way that people should be, not just in India, in Pakistan or elsewhere. Those individuals have got to realize that people do look up to them. But since then, I'll tell you some of the things that I've been hearing, especially within the Punjabi music industry. So, Siddharth, as you know, the Punjabi music industry is global. It is the level of influence on the Punjabi youth, as well as the club scene, the social scene, not just in the UK, but across the globe. It's immense. The Bhangra music, the Bhangra is huge. And when I heard individuals, especially some of the younger singers and the people that do mixing, and they said, look, what we need to have now is there's a very famous anthem which is a massive tune for the Punjabis, but in particular truck drivers. So this was in the 20th century, whereby it's a truck driver's anthem, but what they want to do is they said, look, we need to revamp this. We need to remix this now. And in there's a reference to a picture of a very famous Indian actress. I won't mention her name now, because in that it's mentioned that, look, let's put her photo in front of me on my truck as I drive to Bombay. But now what they want to do is they want to remove references to her name and put instead Rihanna. Because I said, when the farmers and the truck drivers and the Punjabis needed somebody to speak up for them, it wasn't that particular Indian actress who we had all idolized. It is now Rihanna. So this is how social movements and popular culture can change things. But I'll tell you another thing is, it's also at this point in time, the silence of individuals who one thought would be one's friends, that bites in more, is more painful than the people in authority or those inflicting aggression on a particular individual or set of individuals. And I think that's something else that we need to bear in mind as well. So those that are keeping silent are, I think, part of the problem rather than the solution.
Are you talking about people whom you otherwise knew and respected remaining silent in India or in Britain?
Anywhere and everywhere, across, those people who I would have thought would have stood up for human rights, who would have spoken up, for press freedoms or academic freedoms, that those individuals need to put their money where their mouth is. They need to be voicing an opinion, and to think that you can just become, passengers on this, or just stay silent, and that just doesn't cut it, because when it will come to that particular individual's circumstances or their if that particular set of individuals are being persecuted, and then when they look around, where are our friends? I think they will be very, very feeling let down by others, because they are not speaking up. And that's where the Sikh community in particular, where it's inbuilt in us, because we know that if we don't speak up, whether it's in terms of the Muslim community or the Hindu community, it was our gurus, the ninth guru, he gave his life for the Hindu Pandit Kashmiris when they were having violence inflicted on them by the rulers of the day. Those are the sort of stories that we are brought up on. So whether, he may not have worn a janeu, may not have been a Pandit, but he stood up for their rights. And in terms of Muslims, in terms of Christians, no, I'm very, very confident and comfortable in my own faith, in my own identity, and things that are dear to me. But, if I am being true to myself, then I need to speak up for other people, because when it comes to my turn, then hopefully I can count on that solidarity, for myself and for my own particular community or sub-community.
So, in conclusion, I want to know what you're going to do next about this issue, if at all, because as you rightly said, this is not the only thing preoccupying your mind or the minds of the British or in in fact, even the minds of the people from Indian heritage. But whenever you do look at it, what are you going to do about it? What are you going to say? How are you going to take it forward? Because the protests are not ending. And now, new leadership has come up. There is new energy after a small hiccup on January 26th. It's not going to, and the government's position is intractable as far as we can make out. How do you think you will be able to, somebody who's been so vocal, to react to it?
Well, so that's an excellent multifaceted question. So let me take 2 or 3 of those points. Firstly, with regards to what happened on January the 26th, I fully condemn the violence, whether that was by a small section of protesters or whether it was those in authority. And that's, and I think that the farmer protesters themselves have condemned that violence and said that they were not part of their tractor rally and they were not part of their movement. So that's dealing with that particular issue. In terms of me, you can rest assured I'll keep juggling the ball. So as I said, one of the beauties of being a British parliamentarian is day in, day out, there'll be a diversity of issues, and I will take on board those issues, local, national and international, and continue to speak up to the best of my abilities so that people within Slough, people further beyond, especially those of Indian heritage as well, that they can be proud of the way that I am serving wider humanity, not just the British polity. In terms of my views on the farmers' protest, well, ultimately, that is where we're now looking to India. We're looking to the government to hopefully have a speedy resolution to the current deadlock, to get back around the table with those farming unions and with those leaders to come up with a solution. Because those farmers themselves, they want to be back in their home. They don't want to be out there on the streets. They want to be earning a living, and they want to be doing what they do and love most, farming. So that's where we're looking to them. In terms of where the movement goes, that is again up to the leaders within India as to where they see things going. But hand on my heart, what I would like is for a speedy resolution to this issue, so that everybody can get back to their livelihoods, and we can all live in a better and more peaceful and prosperous world.
But you know that the British government thinks of India and looking to India as a very, very key partner in trade. So they are perhaps going to be very, very careful in anything they say or do. While they may make statements, but they will be careful. The Indian government perhaps knows that. So you won't be getting much support from the government. And, your other colleagues in the Labour Party, the Liberals, they've got other pressing issues. So is there a risk that you may be, losing traction personally on trying to raise consciousness?
Look, in terms of the UK government, let me also reassure you, the government is always very, very careful in how it frames a particular issue, in how it responds, not just to the Indian government, but to governments around the world. But there are a certain set of core values of democracy, of press freedoms, of human rights that are at the core of debate. So when it comes to calling out injustices or human rights abuses, the people from across the house will do that. They will take on more powerful nations, even than in India, wherein they are looking for trade deals. Let me bring the example, for example, of China. If there are certain things happening, even with the Trump regime, with the American regime, who are one of our closest, if not the closest ally of the UK. We didn't mince our words in terms of what parliamentarians on a cross-section across the House were saying. Even with regards to this, by the way, let me also advise people within India, it's not just people within the Labour Party or the Liberal Democrats or the SNP. many parliamentarians from the Conservative Party have also raised their concerns, and they have spoken up on this issue. In fact, during the recent debate, the majority of people, apart from one individual from the Conservatives, she was the only MP who actually spoke on the official line and didn't dwell upon the human rights issue. Virtually every other speaker, including the minister, spoke on about the need to respect human rights, and that is a message, as the minister himself, the South Asia or the Asian minister said, is that they will be taking that up with the Indian government. So that you can take as given, because if any current government of the day does not speak up about human rights or doesn't have that in their core values, then they will be called out by their own backbenchers as well as opposition parties. So that's why the government knows it's treading a fine line. Look, we all want closer ties with India. We want that trade, the trade deal with India, but just as we want trade deals with Pakistan, China, and Bangladesh and Sri Lanka and other nations. That's just part of global trade. There are hundreds of nations, and the UK would be wanting a trade deal with every single nation. But one thing that we are also very, very, very particular on is that shared values. Those values are very important to all of us. And by the way, apologies, Siddharth, for the bell, because I'm in my parliamentary office, and I think there is a division in the House. So my sincere apologies. And I think we'll have to bring our wonderful interview. It's been an absolutely enjoyable experience where you've held me to account, asked me the difficult questions, and I hope that I have answered all of your questions very, very honestly as well. But that bell has rung, I think, to conclude our interview as well. But it's been an absolutely wonderful experience, and I hope that the viewers of The Wire have enjoyed our interaction.
Yeah, but again, as a final roundup, I want to thank you very much. I was told that there would be limited time, but thank you so much for taking the time off. And we look forward to you saying and your tweets on various subjects. But most importantly, we look forward to seeing you in India in the not too distant future.
ਬਹੁਤ ਬਹੁਤ ਮਿਹਰਬਾਨੀ ਸਿਧਾਰਥ ਜੀ। ਪੰਜਾਬੀ ਹੋਣ ਦੇ ਨਾਤੇ ਮੈਂ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਤੇ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਦਰਸ਼ਕਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਪਿਆਰ ਭਰੀ ਸਤਿ ਸ੍ਰੀ ਅਕਾਲ, अस्सलाम वालेकुम, नमस्कार, वाहिगुरु जी का खालसा, वाहिगुरु जी की फतेह। ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਸਾਰਿਆਂ ਨੂੰ आप सबको मेरी शुभकामनाएं। मैं आस करता हूं कि आपको ये जो आज की इंटरव्यू है आज को आप सबको पसंद आई होगी। मैं आस करता हूं कि द वायर ऐसे ही आगे भी निधड़क होके एंड fearlessly will continue to shed a light on what is happening within India and further beyond, so that the likes of me can also make more informed decisions and opinions within the diaspora community as well. Absolute pleasure.
Thank you so much, sir.
To receive instant updates on all videos from The Wire, click the subscribe button and hit the bell icon. Pay to support independent journalism. Click the link in the description and choose the amount you want to pay.